A big High Court victory over Agricultural Minister John Steenhuisen has given livestock farmers in South Africa a lifeline. We get the details from Saai CEO, Francois Rossouw. Welcome, Francois.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Please give our viewers the gist of that judgment.
Yeah, so we've been in court 3 times now, and luckily, our merits were heard on the 3rd time, and we waited 2 weeks for the judgment and court order. But oh boy, was it worth it! Finally, we approached this court matter from a farmer's side, and I think that's important just to highlight this. We could not stand in for vaccine producers or uh, 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 stores that sell vaccines or vaccine suppliers or all of that. So we came from a farmer's direction. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to ask the court what impediment is there in current legislation that is stopping farmers from vaccinating their own cattle. And the court said there was nothing. There was no impediment, and that the minister and his department was unlawfully prohibiting farmers from vaccinating their own cattle. And then another important one was that the court said that the minister cannot interfere in the supply of, or in the business transaction relating to the supply of vaccines coming into the country. So this is an interim court order. We still have to lodge formal papers for the application that will maybe be heard at the end of the year. But it's a massive victory for farmers, just in the fact that they can now procure and vaccinate their cattle themselves.
It couldn't have come at a better time. I'm sure you saw reports that 90% of commercial beef farmers in KZN had not been able to access state vaccines.
Yeah, that's a shocking statistic, and that we've already seen that some of those cattle herds, and I think their dairy herds, have already become reinfected after some of them being vaccinated already at the start of the year. And that's just because of the lackadaisical approach and the fact that there's no coordinated effort from the department or from provincial state veterinary services in vaccinating cattle herds. You have to find where an outbreak is. You have to draw a 10-kilometer radius, and you have to vaccinate from the outside in. But also, then you need to hit all those spots. So we can clearly see that the approach that has been followed for the last 4 months or since January has simply not worked. And the fact that the minister claims, that we're making progress, and he makes media statements on there's been no reinfections, it's absolute rubbish. And he's been lying himself out of one situation into the next, and it's finally coming to a head now.
And even compounding the delays by fighting people trying to speed up the process.
Yeah, he accused us of that our court matter would delay the vaccine rollout process. And we told him that if that happens, it would only be because of his actions. And if he did that, it would be a dereliction of duty, and we would take him to court for that as well. So yeah, I think the issue is absolutely with the Department of Agriculture, with state veterinary services. It is widely known and accepted that we are in this mess because the state veterinary services has been failing for the last 20 years, and in the last 18 months it's just gone downhill even further. And a crisis like this really tests department, but also veterinary services, and they've just not been able to stand up to that test. So yeah, we are unsure of what the future holds, and how they are going to address this. But the important thing is that our court order does not stop the state from doing anything that they should be doing. It doesn't detract from the job that they should be doing. In fact, it now gives private industry and farmers the tools to assist them with this vaccination battle.
Okay, so what are the practical implications for livestock farmers now, as far as supply and administration of vaccines?
Yeah, so that's a critical question because that's something that the nitty-gritties of the court matter does not address. First of all, so you as a farmer have to notify the provincial state veterinarian or the area or the veterinary services official that is in control of the area which you are in. 5 days prior to you wanting to vaccinate your cattle. And then after you vaccinated them, 14 days after that, you have to deliver an affidavit with all of the details, and that is provided for in the court document or the court order. The important thing now is currently there is no vaccine available for farmers to vaccinate with. So farmers can procure the vaccines from registered and authorized vaccine importers and then suppliers thereof. But because of the fact that this whole process has been centralized from the beginning, vaccine suppliers couldn't place large orders and couldn't really invest in large quantities of vaccines coming into the country because they only had one buyer, and that buyer had a very poor record of paying for vaccines. So that backlog was caused by the Department of Agriculture, and now we have private industry that has to stand in for this backlog and has to contact these external vaccine suppliers to say, look, we are now allowed to sell this directly to farmers who are willing to buy it and are willing to vaccinate. And as soon as you place that order, it's 6 weeks. Then they can only, they produce that vaccine in a 6 week cycle, and then it's imported into South Africa. And then you have to hope that SAPRA issues you with a Section 21 license. So currently, it's only DuneVax that can really bring vaccines into the country, and they've already pledged that 2 million that is coming into the country shortly to the Department of Agriculture. Now, obviously, the department can, and the OBP can sell those vaccines to farmers, but they won't. It's just not going to happen. So we now have to wait for a private supplier to import it legally and then make it available to farmers. And that's the issue where we are currently at. It is important that we implore private industry and suppliers and vaccine producers to take on the battle further. We've now done it from a farmer side and from a primary producer perspective, but we don't have the locus standi as producers, suppliers, importers to take this battle further. They must now assist in getting this boulder over the hill. Because it doesn't help. We have this court order, but vaccine supply is nowhere to be found.
Healthcare matters, but what matters most?
Having cover for the people who keep this business going.
Bonitas is there for you when it counts. Bonitas, medical aid for South Africa. Visit bonitas.co.za and find your plan.
Can you estimate a timeline for procurement?
Well, we don't. That's what we're going to find out today. We have numerous conversations this afternoon with private industry and suppliers and producers from outside of the country. There are a lot of plans that have been made while guys were waiting for this court order. So hopefully we will have further clarity later on in the day. But I don't see anything, concrete happening before end of June, because that's just the nature of this whole cycle, or that is the production. Maybe OBP and the department decides that it's not necessary to be this difficult, and they just sell it straight on to the farmers themselves, because the current process has just not been working.
You mentioned earlier that the powers of the minister have been curtailed. So he can't interfere in international commercial relations now.
Yeah, he can't go to suppliers or to producers of vaccines like he did previously with the Biogenesis Bago Design Biologics debacle, where he just simply instructed Biogenesis and he said, no, look, you can't work with Design Biologics because we want everything that you supply to come directly to us, because we want to be the central holder of all vaccines and distributor of it. So that was an important part of the court order itself, and it will certainly alleviate and will produce more investor confidence, because it's a lot of money. It's 80 million upwards per shipment. And the big thing that I think most people don't understand, it's not just this year. We don't have to vaccinate just in 2026. It's for the next 10 to 12 years. We have to do this consistently. And if we had to rely on government, they would fail us every time. So we need to set up good supply lines. We need to have great logistical channels in order to get these vaccines to farmers, to do this over the next decade.
Now, this has come too late for many farmers who have seen their herds devastated. Does this judgment open the door to sue the minister for damages?
Yes, well, I hope the farmers themselves absolutely investigate this. And we've already begun looking into it, but there are some challenges with this. Unfortunately, there are certain elements to issuing summons for damages, and I think the biggest one will be causality. But I know of farmers who have already done it, and for large amounts. And I really do hope that they succeed, because this was an absolute abuse of power. This is someone who had no expertise whatsoever, appointed people with expertise on his different advisory committees, but he just used them to legitimize his actions. Every time people asked, what about the private industry? Why are you not listening to experts? And he would say, look, here are my experts. On my right, I have all the best veterinarians, and on my left, I have all the private organizations representing farmers. Look, what are you talking about that I'm not talking to private industry? But he never listened to them. He never attended the meetings. And he used all these rubbish excuses of bioterrorism and WOA. None of those excuses was used in court, but he used them in the media. And he lied himself out of one predicament to the next. And now we're sitting with this crisis almost 8 to 12 months later because of him. So I do think that there was malice in what he did. I do think there was subterfuge. I do think he lied intentionally on a number of occasions. And for that, farmers should hold him accountable.
Thank you. That was Saai CEO Francois Rossouw speaking to BizNews. I'm Chris Steyn.